Hey there, Griff Hamlin here. Welcome and thanks for joining me today. In this video, we're going to talk about how you can literally create any possible chord you can imagine. And then at the end, we'll take it a little bit further and you'll see how chords and chord shapes are the foundation for a lot of different things on a guitar fretboard. Because most of us, when we think of chords, we think of something like this. Or maybe we think of comping over a blues or a jazz tune, something like this. Or even it might be something a little bit more rock flavored, like this. Okay, and while those are certainly chords, the way that you know those chords and what you do with them is actually really limited compared to what we're going to get into today. Now, what makes a chord useful to you, both in a musical way and in a, mastering the fretboard kind of way, is when you know what each note's function is. Okay, now, you may have heard that, to make a major chord, for example, to make a major chord, we take the root, okay, the first note of a major scale, and we add in the third note of a major scale, and finally, the fifth note of a major scale. So we have the root, or the 1, third, and fifth. Okay, those are the three notes in a major chord. But that's only 3 notes, and as you know, a lot of chords have more than 3 notes. So, how does that work? Well, it's actually pretty simple. We duplicate many of these notes on the bigger chords. If we look at something like a G bar chord, you probably already know. Well, we know there are 3 notes. Okay, well, as it turns out, there are 3 roots here at the. If for a G here, it's G on the 3rd fret of the 6th string. G on the 5th fret of the 4th string, G on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. Okay, then there are 2 fifths, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's a D. So we've got one at the 5th fret of the 5th string, and there's one again on the 2nd string, 3rd fret. And finally, there's 1 third, okay? Right here. So here, this is truly one of the most important things you can ever learn, all right? And it goes like this. Root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. Okay? Again, root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. Root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. Root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. Yes, I'm repeating this on purpose. When you're just driving in your car, for example, just keep saying that to yourself over and over and over, because those are the notes in a basic root on the 6th string bar chord. Okay, and it doesn't matter where I put it. Okay, the voicing, which is the term for what we say about how the notes fall, the order in which the notes appear, that's the voicing. And no matter where I put this chord, right? So if it's here, it's still root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. If I move it up, say, to a B flat, it's still root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. If I move it to here, root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. Down here, root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. It does not matter where I put it. All right, now I realize that's a lot of information already. If you're not familiar with this stuff at all, and you might feel a little overwhelmed at this point, but please stay with me, because truly the best part is coming right up. So, next thing you got to know is that the most important note of any chord is the 3rd, believe it or not. It is not the root, and it is certainly not the 5th. Why? Good question. Okay, well, it's very simple. If I look at this G chord again, right, there's only one note in this chord that makes it minor, and it's the 3rd. So the 3rd is the only note that determines whether the chord is major or minor. So here it's major, right? Root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. So when I lift my middle finger up, that third becomes what we call a flat third. Okay, by taking the third and lowering it 1/2 step, which is 1 fret on your guitar, we've made a major chord minor. And of course, again, anywhere else I do that, and I realize that the bar can be a challenge here. Try to look past the bar and just look at the notes. And notice that that third is the only note that changes from major to minor. All right, so see, now you know how to build any major or any minor chord on the planet. Major, right? No matter where we put it, it's a major chord. You want to make it minor? Flat the third, lower it by 1/2 step. That's going to work for any chord anywhere. Now you want to make it a 7th chord? Okay, well it turns out that that's easy too. We take one of the roots, we have 3 of them, and we lower it by 1/2 step, and we get the 7th of the major scale. Okay, so remember, here's one of my roots. I could lower it by 1/2 step, and I've got the 7th. If I lower it by another 1/2 step, it creates what's called the flat 7th, and that is the type of 7th that's used in a common 7th chord. Now remember that 7th, major 7th, and minor 7th are actually 3 different types of chords. A straight 7th chord is technically, or is actually, a dominant 7th chord, and it has a flatted 7th, which means we take the root, we go down a 1/2 step to the 7th, we go down another 1/2 step, which is the equivalent of 2 frets, and we now have a flatted 7th. So if we look at my G chord, right? So I'm going to take that root in the middle. I've got 3 of them, right? Doesn't matter which one I choose, but this one's easy to finger. Go down a whole step. Okay, well, as it turns out, my bar's hanging out there anyway. There's my flatted 7th. So root, 5th, now flat 7th instead of root, 3rd, 5th, root. But of course, if you know me, you know that I like to leave out the bottom couple of strings. So when I play chords, generally I don't play the bottom 2 strings. So I play it more like this, and I encourage you to do the same, right? So now I have just the flat 7th, 3rd, 5th, and root. So I still have all the notes, okay? And if I want to make major 7th, then I just take the major chord, and I'm just going to use this much again. I don't really need all that mess. So I just take this little bit here, and I move a root down a 1/2 step. I'm going to take this one down. That makes a nice G major 7th sound, right? And if I wanted a minor 7th, right, I can go back to my G major. I got to do 2 things. One is lower the 3rd. So I have root, 3rd, 5th, root, right? Root, 3rd, 5th, root. In fact, I'll even do the whole thing again. Root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. So my 3rd comes down, and my root is going to go down to the flatted 7th. So now I have a minor 7th chord. So I did just what I did earlier to make it the flat 3rd and the flat 7th. So there's major, there's minor 7th. See, so now you can quickly build any major, minor, dominant 7th, major 7th, or minor 7th chord you could ever want. All of them. They go everywhere. And yes, I realize there's a little bit of music theory going on here. And if you know your music theory, then you'll know I'm building a major scale in my head, kind of behind the scenes. But in this video, I'm giving you the answers. So don't feel like you have to go out and study a bunch of music theory now. But if you want to, I always encourage that because I'm a theory geek and I love music theory. So, but let's move on. What if you wanted to add a 9? Okay, what about a 9? You've probably seen chords that say like G9, and you wondered what the heck a 9 is anyway. Okay, well, a 9 is the same as the 2nd of the major scale, right? So if I go back to my major scale, there's the root, there's the 2. But the 9 is up an octave, okay? Similarly, an 11 is the 4th up an octave, and the 13 is the 6th up an octave. Generally speaking, these, what we call color tones, the 9 and 11 and the 13, we don't tend to play them low. in the chord, we tend to play them high. They come out and they sound nicer in the high end, okay? So a 9 is a whole step above the root. So there's my root. There's also a root there, okay? So I'm going to take that one, right? That'll work. Root up there. An 11 is a half step above the third. So there's the third. I just go up there. Or it's a whole step below the fifth. That'd be hard to finger, but it's, again, the same note right there. And the 13, or the 6, is the fifth of the scale up a whole step. Or you could look at it as the 7th down a whole step. Either way, okay? So you want to make a G9 chord. Cool. Take a G7. Remember earlier we played this G7 shape. And that's the flat 7th, that's the 3rd, that's the 5th, that's the root, okay? Well, I want to make a 9 out of it. Well, the root goes up a whole step and now it's G9. That's how you do it. It's really that simple. You want a G13? Okay, let's take, to make the 13, remember we take the 5th and we raise it up a whole step to the 6th. And there's a 13. We can have a 13 and a 9. Okay, you want something really crazy? How about G7 flat, G7 sharp 5, flat 9. Okay, that sounds crazy, but the name tells you exactly what to do. Okay, so again, there's my G7, right? So remember flat 7, 3rd, 5th, root. Well, the name was G7 sharp 5, not flat 9. So there's the 9, there it's flatted. The name told me exactly what to do. And it really is that simple once you know the notes of the voicing. Now, again, voicing refers to what a chord looks like if you write it down on a piece of music notation. Music notation doesn't know anything about your guitar, okay? So when the notes are written on a piece of staff paper, they're music. They're not guitar or piano or any other instrument. So a voicing is how that chord is going to stack up on a staff paper, okay? So if you know the notes of the voicing, and by notes I mean their function, the root, the 3rd, the 5th, not A, B, C, D. I almost never think in terms of note names. I almost never think about that, but I always think in terms of note function. And when students ask me how I know so many chords, I have a hard time explaining that I don't know a bunch of chords. I truly just make them up as I need them. But now you can probably see how that's possible, okay? So now we've done all this with one common chord shape, but in reality, your guitar fretboard is divided into 5 regions. Okay, you may have heard of the 5 boxes. There's 5 scale patterns for a major scale. Well, there are 5 possible major chord shapes on a guitar. That's all. There are not and will never be any more or less in standard tuning anyway, okay? But I'll let you in on a little secret. Now that you know what a voicing is, there are really only 2 voicings, okay? So in the next video, I'll walk you through all of the 5 possible chord shapes and show you how they can help you completely master the guitar fretboard like nothing else you've ever seen. So I hope you'll come back and join me for that, and I hope that you'll kind of play around with these chord shapes a little bit on your own. Try modifying chords that you already know. They don't have to be necessarily that same, G chord that I did. It could be a C chord, could be a, D7. D7, maybe try to figure out what those notes are. Which ones are the root, which ones are the 3rd, which ones are the 5th or the flat 7th. Maybe just try and play around with that and get the juices flowing a little bit. And then come back and join me for the next video where we'll sort of map that all out for you. All right? So thanks for joining me today. I'm Griff Hamlin, and I'll talk to you soon.